Okay, hi, it's Carrie Johnston, and I'm filming today on the traditional territory of Champagne-Anahuac First Nations. And my guest today is Scott Keesey. Scott, please introduce yourself from the traditional territory of T'Anquichin Council and Kwanlindun First Nation.
Hi, Carrie. Thanks for that acknowledgement and the introduction. I'm Scott Keesey. I'm CEO of DISCOVELO here in Whitehorse.
And what is DISCOVELO?
Well, first of all, before we get into that, I want to thank you for inviting me here. I've been following along with the Yep podcast. I'm a Yepper now, I guess. It's great. It's so affirming. I love it. I don't know if you use that term or not, but I think you should. I'm an entrepreneur. I've got a couple of businesses, actually. One pays the bills and one will pay the bills, I hope. I've got a sole proprietor consulting business that is kind of a continuation of my previous career in environmental and mining consulting. But what's really got me jazzed is my startup company that I've started a year and a half ago with some partners here in Whitehorse. DISCOVELO is the company, and we're looking to make an impact by improving mental and physical health and emotional regulation, starting with students in classrooms. We've got a big vision to take a chunk out of that problem for everybody, because the problem is only getting more acute and more widespread. But we're starting in classrooms because we've got a great partnership with Run for Life organization that has been putting stationary bikes in classrooms for a bunch of years across Canada, really effective at helping kids get their heart rate up a little bit and move in the place where they need to use their brains. So that's been a great project, really effective, and we're looking to amplify that by creating some fun interactive software. They're games, it's interactive digital media, but it's video games, but you play it by exercising and modulating your heart rate. So there's an awareness of what your body is doing, and really trying to reforge that connection between the brain and the body in users who really have some emotional dysregulation. And that's so many of us now. And we all know that kid, or we were that kid, or we have that kid. And so the problem that we're trying to solve with this product and this company, we're finding is really resonating with people. It does not take us long to make an emotional connection on that. And so we've got some incredible support from everybody that we talk to. So we're having a lot of fun with that. It's a tech startup company, so we're learning so much, and it's new to all of us, but it's a go. It's a lot of fun.
Did you have a background in tech before you started this?
No, not any more than anybody else out there who, uses a computer for work. Played video games a little bit when I was younger. I've got a son who's really into gaming, but no, certainly not. And that was one of the first things I Googled when we had this idea. Is it possible to start a tech company as a non-technical founder? And absolutely, it happens all the time. And in fact, there's a school of thought that in a lot of senses, it's actually an advantage to be a non-technical founder of a tech company. Certainly there's advantages to it, but I'm pretty comfortable with where we are so far. I'm bringing the leadership skills that I have, and skills from previous work positions, leading teams, and managing groups of people towards a common goal under pressure. So that fits pretty nicely with my CEO role. But as CEO, you're also a janitor. You're picking up pieces. You're doing everything that your team of experts and specialists shouldn't be doing, right? And so it really, what I'm learning, and I'm learning so much, is you're out there doing a lot of leading, but it's as much a support role as anything else. So really trying to bring the right people together to move things forward, and just make sure they have everything they need to do that.
Okay, so global pandemic, what are you learning about your business over the last 8 months?
Well, maybe because it's a new expedition, it's every day is learning, and I'm really deliberate about focusing a lot of my day on research, reading, and learning. And so even without the pandemic, I would have been learning so much. When COVID dropped in March, we were just kind of getting going on a real deliberate round of product development. So we had agreements in place with a program through Boise State University in Idaho to develop our game, to do the coding. We had people in place here to do some of the other coding, brain science experts contributing, and just like everybody, we kind of hit a big pause to take a deep breath and try to evaluate what it meant for us. And what we now know, and what it became very apparent to us early on, is that we're really fortunate for a few reasons. I mean, first of all, we're a very early stage company, so we didn't have any staff on payroll. We were pre-revenue, so we weren't impacted like a lot of Main Street traditional businesses who were losing customers, who were having to lay people off, whose revenue was drying up. So really lucky that way, because it didn't take us long before we realized, okay, the problem that we're trying to solve with this solution is still there. It has temporarily moved from classrooms to home, right? Because that's where the classroom moved to. And so our immediate question was, is there a pivot needed for us from a classroom-based solution to a home-based solution? And when we took a look at our kind of development runway and the time frame and the trajectory that we were on, we decided pretty quickly to stay the course. We said, okay, we're still going to be a number of months before we have something that we're going to be deploying for testing or commercializing. By that time, kids are going to be back in school in some fashion, and let's stay the course. So we were really fortunate to be able to, more or less continue on the path that we were on, and very, very fortunate. It is just, gratefulness is something that I think about every day. Not just because of where we live relative to the problems that other people in the world are having, but personally, I was able to keep my day job that pays the bills. My wife kept her job. We know there's so many people that are not as fortunate as us, and all the other founders on our team too have their day jobs. One of them has since quit to work on this, which is pretty cool. But conditions were right for us to keep doing what we were doing, and we had the right support and conditions in place to do that. So we're learning about that. I think one of the things that came out of that was the importance of relevance and resilience. And I talked about relevance a little bit. Our solution is more relevant than ever, and so these challenges with unregulated emotional energy, and kind of fleeting physical fitness opportunities in schools are only more so. And so those issues now are outside the home. They're in workplaces, and they're in home situations too. But resilience is something that we're really kind of focused on now, and trying to make sure that everything that we do is building our resilience. And so that's in work, that's in personal and home life as well. And I think that's a key skill right now. So we've learned that that's really important for our business and for ourselves. What else have I learned about business? I think, we've learned that it is not just entirely possible, but an incredible opportunity to be a for-profit business. So we're structured as a high-growth startup company, a for-profit business model. We're focused on growth. and scaling a solution, really quickly and globally eventually. But we come at it as a social purpose organization. We didn't start this venture because we wanted to make boatloads of money. We were talked into that business model because the idea that we had about bringing a solution to a problem that we were all passionate about had potential to scale and fit quite nicely into the startup business model. So, there was some, a bit of kind of internal tension off the start about whether, geez, is this possible? Yeah, well, it sounds like it's possible. Is it advisable? Well, people who we're learning to trust are telling us that, yeah, it is. And the more we move through this journey, we realize that what I kind of had envisioned as a bit of a ridge, we're on this, walking this fine line between for-profit and social purpose, is actually becoming a really big plateau, a well-populated area of new companies that are leveraging the power of this business model to really not just scale their revenues and scale their customer base, but to scale their impact and to bring the solution to as many problem locations and individuals as possible. So we're learning that, and that is really truly inspiring. I mean, you know what happens when when LinkedIn starts curating your feed and you start following articles about this stuff, you start seeing more and more about it. And so it's inspiring to see other companies out there who are succeeding. It's really encouraging to see investors recognizing this model. The rise of impact investment, for example, is it's not a fringe thing anymore. And so and the Yukon startup community and ecosystem is really kind of all in on this kind of business model and supporting startup companies and social purpose organizations and inclusivity and all the right things that are really kind of the at the leading edge of new business development globally right now. Yukon is really tapped into that. So we're really grateful to be a part of that right now. Yeah. I could go on about the things
I know
I have.
You're studied, I'd say. You've got, I mean, you're hitting you're obviously investing a lot of time in understanding the ecosystem as well as you can to attract that investment and to position yourself as I suppose really it's part of being organized, right? It is preparing yourself to, because the investment funds are there, but you've got to position yourself to be able to access them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And investors have a checklist, that they want to see. And so we're being methodical about going through that. But one of the most important thing for me is that I feel that it's incumbent upon me and my team to have the deepest understanding of the situation that we're in and the challenges that we're going to face, to try to identify our blind spots, and really have the clearest eyes wide open view of our obstacles and our headwinds and the path ahead. We've taken on private investment. And so this isn't just our money and our time that we're putting into this. We've taken on private investment. We have, I've spent how many hours on this unpaid so far. And so, I recognize that, my family has a limited appetite for that. And so we need to get to revenue and growth and market entry in this company as quickly as possible for all those reasons, to honor all of those investments in us, time, money, support, that everybody has provided in us. So yeah, I'm doing my homework. I'm really trying to make sure that we give this the attention it deserves. And
Do
I'm
you feel,
passionate about it. I'm loving what I'm doing right now, and I've got such a great team, and I want to do this. I mean, I use this all the time. My old job kept me up at night, and this one gets me up in the morning, and that's the truth.
do you find like your old job though is supporting you in that sort of like thinking about the spread or thinking about the scope and like almost in a way I'm thinking, you know, like in mining, you know, we've got our regulatory checklist, the things that we have to do, or you know, or in environment or whatever. Like, do you find
Mhm.
that those skills you're finding transferability between them?
Yeah, absolutely. They are. I mean, I was very fortunate when we moved here in 2000, early 2004, to happen into a position where I was given some great mentoring and coaching and a ton of responsibility early in my career, and I was supported to grow and to develop my own skills and resilience really quickly by being immersed in in some pretty some pretty high responsibility positions early on. And I think cutting my teeth there in that environment, in that role, not to mention, consulting is a pressure cooker. And so you either develop resilience through that, or it kind of chews you up. And I went through both. I had to. I'm very public about having to leave that job for a number of weeks because of some work-induced anxiety that I had, and that's partly because I'd been doing it for a long time, but I wasn't managing my workload as well as I could have been, and I certainly wasn't focusing on my own mental and physical health like I should have been. And so I learned a lot through that experience. And if we're talking about transferable skills, that's probably the biggest one. I mean, you can take training for how to manage teams and project management skills and all of that, but the lessons learned from having to step away from a professional position because of some of the physical and mental manifestations of anxiety was it's really part of what landed me in this new startup, right? I've got experience with that, and I know what that feels like, and I want to try and help others avoid that situation and give professionals and people another tool to manage that and have the awareness of what can happen and how the brain and the body are connected, because that was a big lesson for me, right? We really tend to think of our brains and our bodies as separate entities that we deploy independently in different situations. And that's not the case, right? The more we understand how those are connected and how they work together and how information and signals travel back and forth between them, I think the better we're all going to be and the more resilient we'll be in these situations. So that was a bit of an excursion from your question about transferable skills, but no, I've certainly learned a lot in my previous life and or previous career. And yeah, it continues to keep the lights on in the house here, and I'm hopeful that that's going to change soon and I can make a full transition, but that depends on how successful we are with our next fundraising rounds.
When you were in one of your earlier responses, you were talking about sort of with kids, but the unregulated emotional energy, and I was like, oh, I got that too, right? Like we got that as adults, and we've got lots of lessons to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like we're all in a state of hypervigilance right now. I mean, we're like 4 days away from an American election, and I know some of us are more invested in that than others, as much as we try not to be. COVID has just exponentially increased our emotional responses to these situations. Yeah, we were as a society, I'd say we were not in a great place before COVID. And COVID has only made all of those things more challenging in most ways. I mean, you know, there's interesting stories emerging from some people you talk to. I'm sure you've talked to people who, you know, are maybe introverts by nature, who really didn't like going to an office, and wanted more time for gardening and had always wanted to learn how to bake, you know, and maybe there are silver linings that I think people are discovering. And I think it's part of self-care to be able to focus on some of those things that, you know, that we may not have had the opportunity to experience otherwise. There's definitely a cost, you know, and there's a trade-off and a compromise that I think everybody would recognize. But you know, not everybody has those stories, but I've got a few. I've enjoyed a new, deeper connection with my family from spending more time with them. You know, what I was dreading early on has actually turned into quite a lovely rhythm with my family here. And again, I know not everybody has that. We're fortunate to be in that situation, but I think it's really important to kind of see all sides of this. You know, that you can't live in dread all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's good for you.
What are you learning about Yukoners right now?
You know, I think the nature of this place and the type of lives that Yukoners lead by choice, if you choose to be here, assuming you have a choice, if you're here by choice, you have signed up for a certain set of challenges in life. Again, I think those are, you know, I'm willing to scrape my windshield every morning for 6 months because of the joy that Yukon living here brings me in so many other areas. But the resilience, I'm going to keep coming back to this, but the resilience that I'm seeing in the people around me and the people that I'm talking through in life and business is truly encouraging. I can only imagine that there are umpteen other places on face of the earth where, you know, where people are banding together and finding their deeper inner resilience. But this is where I am right now. So I'm learning that Yukoners as people have a high degree of resilience compared to probably what we all thought we had, to be able to go through something like this. And that's really inspiring to see. You know, we're certainly learning a lot more about our different industries and what it takes to maintain business continuity in these situations. I think we're learning a lot about ourselves that we maybe would rather not know. I don't want to dwell on those too much, but we're learning some hard lessons about ourselves. I think about our territory, about the important points in governance, what really matters to us in governance and in business. And this is really, you know, having COVID land on us, it is bringing vulnerabilities to the surface and forcing all of us to confront them in whatever capacity we have to kind of get through our day and to keep our businesses going. But I think that the most incredible thing that I've learned is how with the right organization and the right support, people whose businesses and lives have been devastated by this situation are picking themselves up, turning 180 degrees and killing it at something brand new. And that is, I mean, the stories coming out of the Pivot program at UConnU are mind-blowing. I mean, I know some of my friends who are in that program who are so much more vibrant and committed to what they're doing now than they were before. By necessity, I'm sure, everybody's endorphins are elevated about what they're doing, but man, that's just really cool to see some of those stories come out. And I think the more airtime that those stories get, the better. I mean, we didn't have to pivot too much. We just kind of took a pause, carried on. But yeah, I'd like to think that if we'd had to, we could have, because I've seen the infrastructure there to support it, and I've seen so many success stories come out of that. I think that's probably the most inspiring thing I've learned.
I mean, I think that's the thing that I always think about with UConners when it comes to innovation, because this is for UConn Innovation Week, is that like we're just so resourceful here in the territory because we choose to be here for that, and there are those, like, we've got this in geography we always talk about the friction of distance, right? So like there are these forces that kind of restrain your geography or how you like live in a space, and because of the restraints that we have here in the territory, because of climate and geography and those sorts of things, we're resourceful, and that is such a huge precursor to innovation. That's kind of like the necessary sauce that's required for those explosions of real innovation, which is to create something that wasn't there before.
Totally. Couldn't agree more. I think that's really, really well put. Yeah.
What are you learning about leadership?
About leadership, I'm learning a lot of what I thought I knew about leadership is dated, and I'm learning that leadership is it's a continuum. It is constantly evolving, and it's not just something that you can learn. You can't just sign up for a course. You can't just work at a leadership position for a couple of years and then say you're a leader. Whether or not this is true or not, I don't know, but I feel like in some sense you're born into leadership. I was informed at an early age in my career that I was going to be a leader, whether I liked it or not. So I better just get used to it and own it. I kind of took that to heart. I don't know if they were true or not, but I feel drawn to leadership because I get so much satisfaction in working in a team, in that kind of support role. I do see leaders as more supporters than kind of the front of the echelon formation, right? And I've always been a generalist. I've got a bachelor's in environmental science. I never specialized in anything in the environmental field in my training, but in the position that I was in, I worked with so many professionals in different disciplines, engineers, biologists, chemists, across the board. And so I was always in a general role and never really deep in the weeds on any one particular technical issue. And so I think that allowed me to always kind of see the bigger picture, to be able to see how different disciplines work together, but also to be able to see how different disciplines and the types of people who are drawn to different disciplines can can kind of be like oil and water sometimes. And so it always seemed like a little bit of a chess game in moving these interdisciplinary teams forward to a common goal, because sometimes leadership is just keeping people apart for a while and just letting them, stay in their own sandbox and do the thing that they're very good at. And there'll be a time where we come together later, but that's not right now. So that requires constant attention. What else am I learning about leadership? The importance of empathy is something that I've really come to realize over the last couple of years. I'm not an empath by nature, so I'm having to work really hard on it. And that paid immediate dividends in this new venture. As we faced one of our earliest challenges. I feel like it did. You might get a different story from other people, but I really feel like a sense of empathy and an awareness of what it is and how important it is helped navigate me through a sticky situation that I think at a different point in my career I may have just kind of bulldogged and probably wouldn't have gone well. And so, I think these times in particular call for a heightened sense of empathy. And if we all had a little bit deeper understanding of how empathy can bridge divides in all manners, now I don't know, the more I think about some of the challenges that we have right now, I just can't help but think that that an empathetic nature would be one of the best assets that we could have. So I'm working on hard on empathy as a leader, but also as a life partner, as a friend, as a stranger in interactions. Every time I have the awareness to try to bring that to a conversation or an interaction, it works in my favor, and I think in favor of the person I'm interacting with. So so that's something I'm all about right now. Team alignment. Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like that really, you're talking about empathy, but you're really talking about, in some ways it's kind of going back to this like awareness and regulating, which is kind of what your business model is, right? So it's just being able to bring those things and practice them and to train ourselves to do them, right? To whether we're using brain science or using a video game to kind of bring that level of awareness to what's happening physiologically in your body, or whether you're trying to use those like general just human cues, the subtle things that we do and say and things like that when we're interacting with our fellow humans. It's to try to bring these levels of awareness to those cues either in ourselves or external to us.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of overlap in the business problems, solutions that we're developing, and that's still lost on me sometimes. You're right, it is a work in progress, right? But I have these moments every once in a while where I'm like, God, I know this is, but it's a constant effort, right? And it's when it doesn't come naturally, it's work. And, I read something great the other day that said, life is hard in any given situation. If you've got a decision between two different paths, one might seem easier right now, but it's going to be harder later. One's harder now, but it's going to make things easier for you later. So choose your hard, right? And for me, I'm trying to choose to do some of that hard work now to make things easier down the road. My nature has often in the past been, that seems kind of hard. I'm going to do the easy thing, right? And yeah, I've been bitten by that enough that I'd like to think I'm, learning my lessons, growing up a little bit, and in my 40s. Never too late, right?
I always I've been thinking about it lately. I like to cook meals, and then I cook a lot because my background's in catering. So my partner's always saying like, it's impossible for me to cook for 2 people. I always cook for 20. And that comes from my days working in mining as well as a cook.
Yeah.
But I always put it into the freezer. I don't like putting it into the fridge even so much for leftovers for the next day. I'm like, no, this meal is so that future Carrie is super happy with past Carrie. Because one day I'm going to pull it out of the freezer and be like, yeah, way to go, past Carrie.
Yeah.
You nailed it on this one. And I've been trying, and I always do that in food. And now I'm trying to bring that into other aspects of my life. Even though this moment right now is really hard, future Carrie is going to be really grateful that you did this.
Yeah. Pay it forward for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
What advice go ahead.
Just a couple other things that I've learned. I think the importance of team alignment. We did the business boot camp at Launch Space at UConstruct a year ago,
Right.
and they did some great exercise with us right up front about personal values, combining those into a common set of team values, and identifying your why, right, as a business. And so we did some pretty strong work on that early on to make sure that as a group we were aligned in what we were doing, but why we were doing it. And we've had to use that. We've had to go back to that well a few times, as we've got busy and faced some complex decisions. It's been really effective for us to go, okay, why are we doing this? Let's just go back to that. Let's touch that stone. And that's been super effective for us. So, as part of leadership, I think knowing when to bring the group back to that has been a really valuable skill. And I'm really grateful that we were kind of taken through that exercise to have that as an asset to utilize and a tool. And celebrate the wins, the little wins, right? There's so many headwinds, and there's always another big obstacle in business, that sometimes it's hard to acknowledge that, wow, we just have 1,000 wins in a row, little ones, and my partner John Carson is so good at that. Every day he's cheering on Slack, just can you believe this? Can you believe what we're doing? It's so amazing. And so I'm learning a lot from him and from my other partners. Again, could go on and on about the things I've learned about leadership and teamwork. It's super inspiring right now.
One of the things that we all have to kind of lead ourselves through right now is this pandemic and these new public health measures that are in place to kind of, keep the whole community safe. Mm-hmm. Which of the safe six are you having the hardest time with in your life?
Avoiding crowds. I don't know what number that is, but I'm pretty sure that's one of them. I'm an extrovert. I'm social by nature. I'm an electronic music DJ. I love making people dance on a dance floor, all packed together, sweating, cheering, loving it. And I really miss that. That's a hard one for me, for sure. We talked about people who are, kind of celebrating the opportunity to just stay at home and be by themselves. And I have moments where I'm okay with that, and I'm okay being with myself and just by myself in stretches, but I do need to get out and be in a big group of people and see social dynamics at play in large groups. I find it fascinating, and it's always a learning opportunity to watch big groups of people interacting, and I always treat it like a bit of an experiment. And and I miss that. It's challenging for me. We've my family and myself, we've got an intentionally large group of friends. We were deliberate about trying to maintain connections with as many different people and different types of people as possible, just for the range of exposure, of experience and perspective that brings to us and brings to our kids. And that's so anti-bubble, right? Like, so, you know, we're challenged with that as a family, like so many other people are, but I think that's the hardest ones for us. Yeah.
And so how are you kind of keeping well with that? Like what are you using to sort of fill yourself up when you can't have that, you know, same gathering size?
Being outside, you know, I grew up in national parks. My parents worked for national parks. So I was lucky enough to live in some of the most amazing places in Canada as a kid, and was always outside. And that's one of the things I love most about being in Yukon. So, and you know, as we know, there's more leeway to interact socially when you're outside. So we've done almost all of our interacting outside, and so be able to keep some of those connections with other people on bike rides or boat trips, where we're able to keep a distance, I think has been the saving grace for us. So yeah, we've been able to do that. I think that's the thing that has helped us overcome that challenge the most, is just being able to be outside. You know, connecting like this with family abroad. So we spent more time on Zoom, just like everybody else. But also just getting to know my family more. You know, we pre-COVID, we were able to, you know, just kind of be off doing our own thing. And my wife and I work 6 feet apart, 8 feet apart now. And so we've got a different relationship than we did before, and it's stronger, right? We're more accountable to each other and ourselves and the relationship that we have. And that's been, again, a bit of a silver lining here. I truly feel like the two of us are going to come out of this stronger than we went into it. Yeah.
You've gone from we become co-workers with our families.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to figure that out.
Yeah.
You can't just blow up at each other and then take off.
You know? You certainly can't.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for emerging entrepreneurs right now, people who are starting businesses?
Get a good network of mentors and peers. So, you know, the things that I'm probably going to talk about here right now are probably, you know, maybe a little more geared towards startup business. It's kind of where my head's at and what I know right now. You know, I've never run a bricks and mortar, you know, retail business or anything like that. So, but I would like to think that some of these things apply to whatever kind of business you're about to start. You know, you can't do, even if you think you can't do it on your own. And so much of what you need to start a business, you have to get from other people. And the sooner you accept the fact that you need a network of people to help you, the better off you'll be. Because my experience is that people are so excited to help if they're into what you're doing. There will be bottomless support. That's been our experience. We cannot take advantage of all the support that's been offered to us. There are not enough hours in the day. There are not enough people in my company to be able to take everybody up on all the support that's been offered. Maybe that wouldn't be everybody else's experience, but I think that's a combination of, you know, again, the mission that we're on really resonates with people, and we're finding that. And so I think that translates into some buy-in and support. So if you have an emerging business idea, either find something that connects with other people, because you're going to get more support that way, or find a way to communicate what you're doing that emotionally connects with other people. I mean, that's the first rule of pitching, right? is to emotionally connect with your audience. And so without straying into rules of pitching too much, I think just find the way to draw that support in, because it's there. And just the timing right now, I think in Yukon is pretty incredible for starting a business. We've just been blown away by the support that we've got from Yukon University, UConstruct, and that's all through funding from economic development. So even pre-COVID, the commitment to growing the innovation sector in Yukon was there, and they've been doubling down on that. So much support now with COVID specific support programs. You know, as challenging a time as it is to be in business, I think there's some amazing opportunities right now. And if you can find those, the support is there to really run with new business. So I would say, you know, go do the boot camp. That's what I should say for sure. If you're an emerging entrepreneur, well, I think one of the best pieces of advice I can offer is, you know, take up that magical program, apply to the boot camp, the startup boot camp at UConstruct. It's we did it a year ago. It's 3 months, kind of, you know, periodic programming, but we learned so much, and that really set us on our course, and I think set us up to succeed. And so look that program up and try and get in the next cohort, because that's a real fast track to success. Yeah, we talk a lot about disruption, right, in the world of innovation and startup culture. And right now, this is just a massive global disruption. Everything is disrupted. And so from disruption comes opportunity. And markets are being completely transformed. I'm sure you've talked about this with others, where pivoting is required, but it may be counterintuitive, but I think it's an amazing time to consider a new venture. And particularly if you have that vision of the future, I don't know, it's hard right now, who knows what the heck's going to happen, but if you're a forward-looking person, and you can spend some time trying to identify opportunities, there's a good chance you can make something of it right now. Yeah.
So what are your, you talked a little bit about your personal values as an entrepreneur and leader. What are some of the values you're hoping for the Yukon economy kind of going forward?
So there's a lot of talk about economic recovery and the shape of economic recovery, right? Is this a V-shaped recovery? Is this a K-shaped recovery? And all of those shapes that they're talking about are two-dimensional, right? They're all on an XY axis. And I had a great analogy presented to me early on that is the recovery from this pandemic and this incredible disruption that we see right now is in many ways going to be along a third axis, the Z axis. So we'll talk about the Z axis, right? And so that is I think something that I'm hopeful that Yukon as a business community and the governance of business in the territory can acknowledge the fact that that markets are going to be recovering in directions that are non-traditional, new markets emerging, new ways of doing business. Look at some of the sports leagues that are, have opened back up with no audiences, right? No fans in the stands. There are so many examples now from the past 8 months of how businesses and industries have recovered and transformed in unimaginable ways. And I'm hopeful that Yukon can identify that and use its nimble, stature to take advantage of some of those things, right? I do believe that as a relatively small, financially kept jurisdiction, we have an incredible privilege, and that is manifested in how nimble we can be. And I think there's an amazing opportunity for us to translate that into into some leverage in new markets that are opening up and opening up differently. I mean, we're certainly constrained, geographically. We're constrained with some of the investment and infrastructure in some of our traditional industries, but even within those, I think there are going to be some really interesting ways to keep our economy moving forward. And I'm just hopeful that, that not everyone's just waiting around for things to be like they were before. Because I think that's going to be prohibitive, and I think it's going to set us back. And that kind of comes back to innovation, right? Yeah.
I think, that's a great way of phrasing that. And, I think UConn was pretty quick to realize that this is our new normal,
Mm-hmm.
from a policy perspective. And I think that's why you saw, a lot of programs that the UConn has piloted during this time, like the pivot program, like some of the economic benefit and supports and sick leave programs are being sort of now rolled out at a more national level, or looking to be adopted in other jurisdictions. And I think that's like, we're super resourceful because we are in this, we're, like you're kind of saying, we're an isolated grid, and we certainly talk about that from a power perspective, right? Like we are our own little isolated grid up here, like an island. And because of that, we've got these boundaries and frictions of our distance.
Yeah.
But because of those are our known constraints. If we take that boot camp model, what are our known constraints, and then how do we look for emergence in that? So, hey.
Yeah, and I think we're doing a lot of that really well right now, and so I want to acknowledge that for sure, and I think staying that course, and I think we've learned a lot about how resourceful and resilient we can be during this pressure cooker period. And I think there's a lot that we're learning about this that we can carry forward into the new normal, whatever that is, right? Mm-hmm. Resourcefulness is a great way of framing it, I think. Yeah.
So any books, podcasts, songs, anything that's getting you through that you want to recommend?
Oh, so many. Oh my God. I've read more in the last 18 months than I probably have in the previous 18 years. In terms of books, there's this tidy little book called What the CEO Wants You to Know by Ram Charan, and it's kind of a business classic, and it's kind of funny and lots of exclamation marks, and so I keep coming back to that one. That's a great one if you're just getting into business in a leadership role. So that's been a great one. Contagious by Jonah Berger was amazing, and that talked about the power of ideas to spread, and what actually makes things go viral, or ideas transfer word to mouth, by word of mouth. And so that has some direct impacts on what we're trying to do. So I learned a lot from that one. Music, I'm all about Bandcamp right now. I had a Spotify trial, and Spotify was great. It's awesome to have like unlimited, increasingly homogenous music at your fingertips all the time. But Bandcamp's model that actually supports artists is really important to me as a former, I guess, performing real musician that did it for a while. And I have enough friends in the industry now, and I trust their opinion, and they're all about Bandcamp. So get your music through Bandcamp. Podcasts, I've been geeking out on 538. right, you know, leading up to the election, getting down into the polls. I probably shouldn't be, but I find it fascinating. There's all sorts of startup podcasts like Startup Canada I've been listening to. Cooking shows. I've been all about the cooking shows with my kids, and my son really loves to work in the kitchen, and so we've been watching cooking and baking shows. I've got some guilty pleasures. You know, I think part of wellness is not just focusing on all the things that you know you need to do that are good for you. I've been working on meditation and trying to improve my physical fitness routine and all of that. But, you know, my little guilty pleasures, I get wellness, mental wellness out of, you know, staying up late and eating chips and watching The Good Place because Ted Danson is so good. It reminds me of Cheers and A Simpler Time, and that's important. And just one more thing, pay for your journalism. Journalism is so important right now, and you can support journalistic integrity by paying for the platforms that seek real truth and provide balanced journalism. So I really encourage people to get out of their echo chambers and subscribe to news platforms that provide a wide range of perspective and fact check journalism. So that's really important, I think.
It is, yeah. Scott, this has been a great interview. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you. I've had a lot of fun, Carrie. Thanks for everything that you're doing here. I know this is your initiative, and it is going to be a really incredible time capsule to look back on. And yeah, thanks for reaching out. I've had a great chat too.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.